There's always this little bit of lead time when you go live on YouTube, so you don't know. You just start talking because you're either staring blankly at the camera, waiting for the show to actually go live, because you click the live button and it has a timer that goes off. 3, 2, 1. You're live. And I've done that before, and I'm watching for that to happen with staring at the camera like this, going, waiting for that 3, 2, 1 to count away. And then when you look back, of course, that's there. So I've gotten into the habit while the timer's going to start talking nonsense, just to start talking like, hey, I believe I am going live. And so if you caught that as you were coming in, that's all that was. So everybody, welcome to the show tonight. We're live. As you have noticed, no intro music, no fanfare, no announcement, because, well, that's the way it is when I go live on YouTube until I do something about that. I want to go, as I've mentioned, I want to take this show live more often, like daily. I like doing the live show, and I love interacting with you guys. So I think we're going to get it all set up and start doing that, along with the expansion of this channel, which I have hinted at a couple of times last week, where we're going to start. Now, nobody freak out. The shows are still going to be free. This show, the daily show at 9 o'clock, still open to anybody with no charge. But I'm going to start putting up some memberships that allow you to come in and sign up, and you can get extras because you're on the inside track. You're in the private portion of the channel. You're like my buds. It's like you get, hey, I got the password. Let me into the back room. Hey, Scotty here. Yeah, what's the password? And so you're allowed to come in. And we'll do some extra things, extra shows, extra spiffs, spiff might not be the right term, but little extra packages for you guys. And it's going to be $1.99 and $4.99, and I might have one more level, and I haven't put it in there yet. I've just got to see what I can do that's extra enough to get you guys to want to come and do that. And all that does, it's a monthly recurring charge. So if you come in at the $1.99 level, it just takes it off your card every month. So that's all I'm going to say about that until I announce it. When I announce it, it won't be so much during show time. I'm going to do its own video, and you can go watch it at its own time as soon as I get that launched. And tonight, you don't see any of the logos up around me. You don't see the little scroll bar at the bottom, because it's a different program I have to use to go live on YouTube. So all that stupid business out of the way. And the nice thing about it, by the way, is I don't have to cut off at 25 minutes at the bottom of the hour and take a break. And I don't have to, if I don't want to, I don't have to stop at 10 o'clock Central Standard Time. So let me say hey to everybody that's in here for now. I see Steve Clark, you're here. Good to have you. This is one of the best things about being live, so I can say hey to you guys. I can't take lots of time and still maintain the decent flow of the show, but, right now we can do that. Master Finn, good to see you, brother. He's steering this ship right now. So Steve Clark, Master Finn, Siani, is that how you say that? Siani Reese? It's fine here. It's good to see you, Siani. Niall Parkinson from Ireland. It's good to see you. I also see my good friend KDO from MN. That's KDO, Kevin Olson from Minnesota. He's a good friend of mine. I've known Kevin for about 28 years. And we went to the same church together when my daughters were babies and when I was married to my ex-wife. So Kevin has known me through thick and thin for many years. We just talked on the phone a bit tonight. So I'm glad you made it, Kevin. It's good to see you here. Barry Chad, good to see you as well. Field Guy, great seeing you. And who else we got? Come on, speak up. Who else is here? So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're sitting in. I don't see any of the women folk here tonight. Now, what's with that? That's a couple of nights now this week. We haven't seen much of our let's see. Oh, wait, Siani, you say, thanks for the welcome, though. We have met before when I was Lady Dragon Slayer. Oh, there you go. There's one of our women folk. Then Neri, the Dragon Queen. I'm sticking to this name now. All right, good to have you. I wondered when I said that. Is this a female? So I'm glad to have you here. You're the only one in here tonight with a bunch of us surly guys. Oh, except there's Morgan Snow. Good to have you, Morgan. Glad you're here. Delaney's here. You're woman folks, she says. And so fantastic. Glad the gang is joining up. So, folks, if this is your first time here, I don't think anybody I'm talked to that this is your first time, but there's more people over just watching the show. I want to let you know that this is the Intrepid radio program, as if you didn't know that, right here, not on the Odyssey Radio Network tonight. I did not put up a show for Odyssey, so they're playing a repeat of this show over on Odyssey Radio Network. And we're live here tonight on the YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. Now, I kind of want to jump into this right away because, and I know, Niall, I think you're the only guy here that's from out of the country. I don't want this to be boring for people who don't live here. But the elections in the United States. Over there in Ireland, you don't have to worry so much about our elections. But they, as you said today, they do affect you in a way. And so I like some of your input as well, Niall. Barbara, by the way, good to see you. Glad you're here. And Barbie D and Lucky Stone is here as well. And so I want to talk a little bit about the election, a little bit about stuff that's going on around it, rather than speaking of all the mechanics, which I don't understand everything that's going on. I started talking this morning. I did it on the Facebook Live channel, so I could reach some of my Facebook friends who don't normally see this YouTube channel. And I started talking on some of the stuff. We started talking about the vote was breaking on both sides, and still, as of right now, both candidates are under the 270 mark, unless something magical has happened in the last hour. And that left us only with kind of Pennsylvania. It's going to be that big determining state. And for those of you who haven't seen it, I believe I shared it on my Facebook page. I have to go back and check and make sure it actually got there. It's something describing the reason we have the Electoral College. Now, there's something you have to understand about electoral votes. And this is why I went a little apeshit when we were talking about the Democrats talking about wanting to abolish the Electoral College. If you abolish the Electoral College, you are starting to take apart the cogs of the machine that make us the kind of government, the kind of nation that we are. We are, let's clear something up, and many of you already know this. We are not a democracy, capital D, democracy. The United States is not a democracy. Just like we are not a monarchy, we are not an oligarchy, we are not a democracy. We have democracy, but we are not defined as a democracy. We are, and I've said this before, and you all should know this. You could probably say it for me over in the chat room before it even comes out of my mouth. We are a constitutionally limited representative republic. Now, what that means is when it comes to voting, it is not the one man, one vote that determines the outcome. It is not a democracy in that respect. The democracy comes in that we have freedom to cast our votes. But because we are not voting as one big entity, even though we say, oh, we're all unified, it's all the United States, we're all United States citizens voting for the United States president or senators or whatever. And senators are a good example of what I'm going to talk about here. We are 51 independent, 50 independent states plus Washington, D.C., which is a district, not a state. So we have independent states casting their votes. Now, this is something that came up about this whole question about President Trump is contesting already the way some of these votes are being counted. He's calling for a stoppage on the counting. Why is he doing that? I'm as confused about that as some of you, other than I understand that there are some irregularities that have taken place. There are laws that take place. And especially in Pennsylvania, there are laws where they're contradicting some of their own laws that they made. And it keeps changing. Pennsylvania is a mess right now because of this, but they're getting a vote count. And I think we should depend on the vote count. The thing is, the president of the United States is not elected on a straight one man, one vote total. He's not elected that way. He's elected because we are a constitutionally limited republic, representative limited republic. Every state, all 50 states, the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., all have electors that are appointed to them. 43 or 534, if I didn't invert my numbers, because every state has 2 senators. And the reason we've done that is so everybody is represented. Those 2 senators, doesn't matter if you got 10,000 people or if you got 10 million people in your state, that those 2 senators represent congressmen that go to the House of the House of Representatives. And now those 2 senators from each state, there are then electors for each state that's appointed. And bigger states with larger populations have more electors. Those with smaller populations have smaller number of electors. And when people vote, those electors then cast their votes. This is the Electoral College. The founders established this in the Constitution. And the reason for this was so that people who live outside of the cities aren't misrepresented by the gross number of population in the cities of any individual state. It's like, what were we looking at yesterday? I was talking to somebody last night. I believe it was last night. It might have been this morning. This morning was so long ago. When you look at, Minnesota, the state of Minnesota, did you know that right now, if you look at a map of Minnesota, it's almost completely red. Red being Republican or Donald Trump. Except for, so you look at the whole state's red, except for that little dot right in the lower right center. That is the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, the capital city and the neighboring city, Minneapolis. The Twin Cities, boom, right there. And a little dot over here for Moorhead, where the University of Moorhead is, way over on the western border of the state. Other than those 2 blue dots, which went Biden, and that represents millions of people, you got the rest of the state is red. So the electors will cast their votes based on the number of people that have voted. Now, the reason those electors are there is to safeguard the interests of everybody across the country. It's a representative form of government. When I vote for a senator, and we only have 2 senators from our state that go to Congress and join the Senate, those 2 senators are supposed to represent us as a state. And this is the way the electoral vote works as well. So that's the basics of it. We'll do a show all about the Electoral College so we can describe that. And the only reason I'm camping on this right now tonight, and I talked a bit about it last night, I'm probably going to talk about some of this stuff tomorrow night, is so we get an understanding of what's going on right now. And I will be very frank and honest with you. I don't understand all the reasons that the president is wanting to. Is it just he's unhappy with the vote? It's I know you could say, well, he believed that he was going to win all these states and he was very far ahead. until there were certain things that took place. And I've been asked by a couple of sources today, what are your sources on this? There aren't sources on this unless you are close to the states and what's going on. There are people that have leaked this information out. And then all you can do is start going to the websites. You start looking at the numbers and you go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. That's what the numbers say. That information kind of goes like this. And I put this up, and it sounds a little tongue-in-cheek, maybe a little snarky to some people, and it causes a lot of argument. Now, it can't get any clearer than this, folks, is the way this was said. And I will say, I got this from my friend Larry Flaxman. Some of you may know him in the paranormal world. He's a white-collar crimes division detective. But I have to say this, he did not make this stuff up. He didn't create this post. He copied it over, too. I think somebody misunderstood when I said, well, I got this from Larry Flaxman. And then they're thinking, well, what does Larry Flaxman know? Well, about as much as I do about this. But here's the points. Fairfax, Virginia has switched 100,000 votes from Trump to Biden, stating a clerical error last night on the night of the election. So somebody says, well, what's your source on that? Well, you can just go over and look at the numbers that were posted earlier and the numbers that were posted later. Trump lost 100,000. 100,000 appear over in the Biden category. There's your source. Go look at the numbers. Next one is Wisconsin suddenly discovers over 112,000 Biden ballots between 3:30 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. Now, people are saying, well, that's not true. The thing is, you can go look at the numbers. If you were watching the votes last night, there was a point in time before 3:30 a.m. Eastern where they said in Wisconsin, we're going to stop counting votes tonight. We'll pick it up at 9 a.m. Well, then in the early morning hours, you see the numbers have jumped about 112,000. That might have been Michigan. That was Michigan, not Wisconsin. So I'm not sure the exact thing, but what you'll find is that there were 112,000 votes or ballots between 3:30 and 4:30 a.m. when they weren't counting anything. Suddenly there was this jump in the middle of the night. Wisconsin magically now has more votes than it has registered voters. Now, there might be a solid reason for anybody running for president to say, we need to challenge that in court. How can there be more votes cast than there are people registered to vote? Could this be people who registered at the polls? Because you can go to the polls and register the day you're voting, a minute before you vote. But that would also reflect in the numbers. You are now a registered voter. So there's a question that came up there. Nevada, the state, is decided they won't have all the vote counts in until Thursday. Michigan has gained 138,339 ballots for Biden since they stopped counting last night. A whopping 0 for Trump or any of the other candidates that are on the ballots, or no write-ins, no nothing. So Michigan gained almost 140,000 votes, and it was during a time when they weren't counting. The numbers jumped. And the funny thing is, nothing jumped for anyone else. Only Biden. It raised red flags. Then there's 6 states that Trump has sizable leads. All 6 states decided to stop counting ballots on election night, which is unheard of. And they all have blue strongholds. So red being conservative or Republican, blue being liberal or Democrat. And so they're blue strongholds, and they all stopped counting their votes, which is unprecedented. Then you have Jack from Twitter. Now, I don't know who Jack from Twitter is exactly. I think it's one of the guys who works at Twitter, one of the owners of Twitter, deleted the current sitting president's tweets on election night. Glaringly obvious election interference. Now, President Joe Biden, these guys can say anything they want. if they want to put up a disclaimer at Twitter and say, we have, and we've talked about this before, we have determined that the president or Joe Biden or whoever is stating something that's not factual. If they want to put a disclaimer on there, it's their website, they can do it. But they completely censored the president's tweets when he declared victory and said he was going to be pursuing some legal action. That's election interference, I believe. Now, Lee Joe, who was running for District 16 Senate seat in Idaho, stated so on his account profile, gets his account deleted from Facebook, not once, but twice. And another example of glaringly obvious election interference. North Carolina has 100% of their precincts counted with Trump in the clear lead, and it's not being called. All these other states that are in question, they're calling Biden, but not calling the state election. They're just declaring, they're prognosticating, they're predicting. Now, so all of this, and Trump hasn't gained out of all the stuff I just talked about, not one single vote in all those hundreds of thousands of extra votes was cast for Trump. Or Jorgensen, the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, the whatever party, none of these other people have votes either. The only votes that showed up last night in the middle of the night in all these states that stopped their counting were votes for Biden. Now, what this did, in essence, you can say, it's all fake if you want to. The problem is that it's got all these red flags popping up all of a sudden. You have a big election last night. This isn't just a little pissy election somewhere. This is big. It's a big philosophical election, a big ideological election. And so this is what you have going on. And this is why anybody is questioning the veracity of the voting structure. Some people are like, oh, yeah, right. All 6 of these states are gonna blah, 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 blah at the same time. Well, what does it look like? Let me ask you. Now, I'm going to state for the record, I don't believe this is just to try to stay in office no matter what. Those of you who want to say, Trump he's a dictator. He doesn't want to leave office. He's got the mind of a king. He thinks he's a king. No. Trump has already said, if I lose the election fair and square, he says, I'm out of here. He says, as a matter of fact, you probably won't ever see me again. He says, I'm just going to go retire and do my thing and live off of the billions he's got in the bank and whatever his companies are doing with his kids. So Trump has already said, I'll just go. I'll be gone. Trump believes, whether you like him or not, like his presentation or not, I have always understood Trump to be a man who believes what he says, a man who has a purpose, a man who maybe didn't do things the way you think he should have his whole life, wasn't the kind of good guy that you'd like to meet, wasn't presidential and all of that, but he was a guy that said, I love my country and I want to do something about it. And do you know why I think there was all the caterwauling? Do you know why I think people at all want to have Biden in there? And it's not even Biden. It could be a cabbage. They could be voting for a cabbage. They just want Trump out. You know what Trump does, the effect he has on this country? People have to start thinking about their government. They have to start thinking. They got to think about why they're doing what they're doing and what the government is doing. They want to lapse back into that lackadaisical, give me a cup of warm milk in the sunshine under the shade of the big oak tree and go do government stuff. Now, they'll complain about taxes. They'll complain about this. They'll complain about that. But people don't want to have to think so hard. And I think what Trump has done is Trump has made them do that. Everybody who says Trump needs to go, he's hurting America. You ask those people, What has he done to hurt you? You're not going to get much of an answer back. I've been there many times with people. I'm going to look at a couple of your I'm going to look at a couple of your posts here. Let's just go through and see what's being said. How far back do I go? There's a big question. See now, Niall, I disagree with you. Nothing's confusing about it. Trump is losing, and he'll pull out all the stops to prevent it. I think he will try to prevent it because he doesn't believe he's actually really losing. That there's more. You look at everything, all the lead up to this election, it wasn't iffy at all. Everybody was saying there's going to be a Trump landslide. The left was fearful of a Trump landslide. And so I don't think he was entering this race thinking anything but we've got this. And why is it? Just so he can bask in the power, so he can strip down naked and sit behind the desk in the Oval Office, or lay and make fake snow angels on the presidential seal carpet in the Oval Office in the nude. I'm the president of the United States. No, I think he's there because he believes he's doing something right, and he believes his opponent is bad for the nation. So yeah, maybe in that respect, he would be pulling out the stops. So let's go on here. Siani says she's with Field Guy. Field Guy said Trump has the numbers to win, and the Dems are changing it. That's exactly true. He does have the numbers to win. I had a bunch of that up here in front of me. I'm looking to see if I've still got that up here. I had this kind of state by state. Now, I don't know how up to date this is, because this stuff is changing minute to minute. Right now, according to this site, let me see, I'm going to refresh it. Yeah, it's the same thing. According to this site, they've got Joe Biden at 264 electoral votes, Trump at 214. You need 270 to win. With the states that are outstanding, there's around 80 electoral votes that are open. So Trump could easily pull this off. I think I read this morning. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Nevada. Now, while they're saying they've called some of these states, Michigan is not done yet. So the news media is calling the states. Doesn't necessarily mean they're right. Now, if you go through this state by state, I see Georgia. Trump is ahead. Small lead. There's like 2.3 million on Biden, 2.4 million with Trump. That's right now. That's it with 98% reporting. That's 16 electoral votes. You got Nevada. You got 49.3 for Biden, 48.7 for Trump. That's 588 versus 580. That looks like a Biden win, but that's 6 electoral votes. But that's only 75% of the votes tallied. North Carolina, Trump has 2.7 million. Biden has 2.6 million. 48.7 to 50.1. That's 94% has been. Now, they're calling other states with less percentages than this, but they're not calling North Carolina. Pennsylvania, with 89% reporting, has Trump at 50.9% with 3.2 million votes, and Biden at 48% with 3.0 votes. So Trump's ahead by 200,000 votes there, with 89% reporting. Could that change in 11 points? Maybe. Arizona, which they called for Biden. He had 1.4 million votes. Trump had 1.3. So 50.7 to 47.9. But that's with only 86% of the votes in. Now, the only way they can call that is if they predict, well, that other 14% that's not in yet, not enough people casting votes in that. Florida, with 99% reporting. You got Biden at 5.2, Trump at 5.6 million. So 47.8 to 51.2%. So you're seeing all of these states, and there's more. Wisconsin, it's got 99% reporting, and Biden's up by about 40,000 votes, 20,000 votes, 20,000 votes in Wisconsin. He's up. So 1.6 million to Trump's 1.6 million with the fractions in between. Texas, 85% reporting. 5.1 million for Biden, 5.8 million for Trump. Ohio, 3.7 million for Trump, 2.6 million for Biden, with 96% reporting. But if I go back up here, well, they've got it in red now. It's still showing as undecided Nevada, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. So it's still sitting at 264 electoral votes. He's 6 away from winning. 270, somebody's pounding, and 214 for Trump. Now, could Trump win that still? Sure he could. They might even give him some of the states that are already marked for Biden. So all of that technical stuff, that dry stuff that you maybe don't like hearing on elections, this is why it's so tight. And this is why the red flags that have come up have said, hey, wait a minute, there's a problem here. Why all these red flags with the tallying of the votes? So anyway, so I'm looking through here, just trying to see some good comments. Barbie D says, like New York State, Scotty, Biden took the city and 4 more upstate counties. Trump won the rest of the whole state, but Biden won the state. Yep. This is the Electoral College, but that is the Electoral College working the way it's supposed to, unless there was any tampering with the vote. I've got a bunch of stuff up here. I did want to cover this, that Twitter places warnings on additional Trump tweets. Twitter's attached warnings to 4 of Donald Trump's total 7 tweets since the vote counting began last night, including 3 on Wednesday morning. Some or all of the content shared in the tweet is disputed, they say, and might be misleading about an election or other civic processes, said the platform, Twitter, which adopted a new policy last month aimed at safeguarding its services from being used to manipulate or interfere in elections. So now the president of the United States can't make a tweet claiming that, I think we're winning. Hey, this is misleading information. Twitter stopped short of deleting the tweets altogether or suspending Mr. Trump's account, which would temporarily prevent him from posting additional tweets on his account of nearly 89 million followers. So Twitter put a warning over a Wednesday morning tweet from Mr. Trump, suggesting that his lead in many key states had started to magically disappear overnight, blaming surprise ballot dumps for the shift. Now, vote tallies in some of the states, such as Pennsylvania and Michigan, those were expected to shift toward the Democrats as postal ballots, which pollsters expected would skew toward Biden. Expected that they would skew toward Biden. You know why? Because the left was pushing the mail-in voting thing. Mail in your votes, vote early. And at the same time, they were telling them, well, this is the reason is the COVID. You don't want to have to go to the polls. But what did they tell them the night of the day of the election? If you haven't voted by mail, go vote at the polls. Then it was safe all of a sudden. So, but wear your mask. So it also affixed a warning to a retweet that Mr. Trump made of a message from an account whose author is self-described theocratic fascist tyrant beekeeper. which claimed the latest result tally from Michigan was a cause for concern and reason enough to go to court. Now, is that stating something as a fact, or is that stating an opinion? Well, Twitter had to censor it for the general public. So what's this all about? Mr. Trump tweeted. The president's own words were not censored, but Twitter attached a warning to the message he retweeted. That account in turn referenced a conservative commentator who published 2 maps of Michigan's partial vote tally that were labeled in any way that appeared to cast doubt on the validity of the latest updates from the state, where Mr. Biden moved into the lead with a 32,000 vote advantage earlier on Wednesday with a 96% of the vote cast. So Mr. Trump then retweeted the original message, which flagged that the latest updates from Michigan had awarded the entirety of all new votes to Mr. Biden. And Twitter attached an information label to the tweet too, which made the tweet impossible to see at first glance. Michigan's Democratic Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, said later on Wednesday morning that she had not seen the specific maps tweeted on social media, but warned against misinformation and false graphics. So now, who's being fascist? You can't put up a map that, well, we haven't approved or put out. So, trusted sources of information about the count in Michigan are our election officials and the county websites, and our website that's reporting out the data that we encourage everyone to look at for results, she said, adding she understood the eyes of the nation were on Michigan right now. She said just over 100,000 votes were left to count, including absentee ballots from Detroit, Grand Rapids, Flint, and Kalamazoo. Mr. Trump said overnight he wanted to seek legal recourse, to bring all voting to a stop, an ambition Team Biden dismissed as outrageous. Now, both sides claimed on Wednesday morning they had a path to victory, and several battleground states still declare the final results. Pennsylvania, about 11 hours ago, was saying only about half the mail-in ballots were counted. All of this is saying that there are questions because there are red flags. Now, there's something I want you to consider as well, and that is the left is a bit outraged right now because this election did not show what they forecast would happen and what they wanted to happen, and that was a repudiation of the Trump presidency. That didn't happen. Trump may well lose the election, but by this much. That's not a repudiation by the citizens of the country of his presidency. That might be that Biden got more people out to vote. The repudiation was supposed to be a blue wave across the country. It didn't happen. Didn't get anywhere near it. If there was a repudiation of President Trump in this election, he wouldn't have any electoral votes. He wouldn't have the numbers of votes in many states that are so much higher than Biden's. You go take a look at the red and blue map of the United States right now, you get an idea about how much the country repudiated Trump. Didn't work. And right now, the left is fit to be tied over this because it did not qualify. This election did not qualify. Pardon me. Wow. Not using my throat correctly, and I'm wearing down my throat. Sorry. The nation didn't give the left what they wanted. And what the left wanted was a repudiation of Trump. And it didn't happen. Now, I've got in front of me something, I've talked about this before, I've read this to you before. This is something I wrote a while back. And this was, I mean, this is over 20 years ago. I wrote this original, and I stepped it up a little bit for a magazine when I had Intrepid magazine going, my print magazine. And I had made some edits to it, and I've edited a bit over the years to keep it updated. But this was written back in, I don't even know when I wrote this, the late 90s, the early 2000s. And I want you to listen to this if you haven't heard it. Ronald Reagan was the very first president I helped elect into office twice. First term and second term. Much to the chagrin of my Minnesota DFL, that's Democratic Farm Labor, for those of you who don't know that, relations, my dyed-in-the-wool liberal communist grandfather, I was the family's token black sheep, the young Turk conservative. And for those of you who know this television reference, I was the Alex Keaton of my family. The tie-wearing, church-going, Reagan revolutionary. That's who I was. I was conservative in an ocean of liberal leftists in my family. For me, conservatism was the political manifesto of God. And as Bible-thumping, ministry-bound seminarian, I laced my speech and my actions with the finer points of Reaganomics and lauded the presidential pink slipping of striking air traffic controllers. Remember when that happened? The 1980s was most definitely the age of conservatism, with its military buildup that bolstered the Reagan version of Roosevelt's walk softly but carry a big stick philosophy. And that unfettered growth of corporate America proved to me over and over again that greed in its proper perspective indeed was a good thing. Ah, those were the days. Life was good for me, and as seen through my youth-colored glasses, there were only better days ahead, filled with a bright future for my country, as long as, that is, Reagan could get around that pesky constitutional prohibition on his running for a third, maybe even fourth term, age notwithstanding. One thing that's been seared into my mind over the years is that the older I get, the less I know for sure. When one begins to question entrenched beliefs, it rarely comes on the epiphanous lightning bolt of a decisive moment in time. It rather rides the slow oxen of the westward bound pioneer, who watches the familiar landscape gradually transform from the Appalachian forests to the prairies and the jagged peaks of the Rocky Mountains beyond. My landscape changed. But it wasn't an overnight process, nor did it lead me to the far end of the political spectrum. While I held true to the Reagan conservatism of my youth, and still do in many ways now, as a man who's going to be 60 years old in a couple of weeks, I found myself combating the hard line of conservatives who seemed to evolve into a form that I found I was no longer representative of what I believed as a human being. Oh, and there it is. Human beingism. I've morphed from being a political ideologue into being a humanist. And I use the small h deliberately as not to be confused with the philosophical mindset of humanism. Though disagreeing vehemently with his politics, I remember the words of my grandfather, who told me a very long time ago, his eyes filling with genuine tears, that he could no longer love a country that could let children and poor people suffer, while he and others who had means simply lived as though they didn't exist. The poor and downtrodden in life are invisible, he postulated. At the time, I brushed him off as spewing some socialistic jargon, but his words made great impact on my deeper thinking, in that I still remember them today. Despite the years it took for me to come to that realization, I think his words molded my psyche more than I would have admitted, and I had been cognizant of it at the time. And I have a great love of history. And As you all know, directly because of this show, one of my areas of personal study and research has been the 19th century expansion into the American West, more recognizable in the conservative mindset as the manifest destiny and eminent domain over a conquered people. You remember those terms when we covered the conquering of the American West. And though a man of Welsh Scot descent myself, I've always been intrigued with Native American studies. My own blonde haired, blue eyed children are an eighth Oneida. I'm talking about my older kids, one of the tribes of the Six Nations. My own blood haired, that's on my wife's side, my ex wife's side, by the way. And I felt it was good for them to grow up knowing about all the elemental aspects of their heritage. I remember an argument that ensued in the mid 1990s between my my in-law relatives and me while sitting around the Thanksgiving table. The heated discussion arose when my brothers-in-law, all avid anglers, were expressing their vehemence that treaty rights with the Mille Band of Ojibwe be rescinded. They were supporting a new legislation that would eliminate 19th century tribal fishing rights on Lake Mille. Now, those of you who listen to my series on the taking of the American West, the subjugation of the American people, you'll understand what this looks like now, today. Their argument was that the Ojibwe were taking way too many fish, leaving none for the anglers and the tourism-driven summer vacationers. Well, believe me when I tell you that the shit hit the fan when I reminded my fishermen brothers-in-law that the treaty with the Ojibwe included the phrase in perpetuity, meaning that the terms of the treaty would be, in essence, forever. The business of summer tourism and fishing had suddenly become more important than the United States and the state of Minnesota upholding its end of a treaty, rendering the words in perpetuity null and void on the Native American peoples of central Minnesota all over tourism and fishing. And this scenario has been reenacted time and time again with Native peoples, from gold in the Dakotas to uranium in New Mexico. My conservatism would tend to support the notion that this is a new age and money should talk while bullshit should walk, letting economics and greed determine the civility, the heart, and the humanity of the situation. The age-old cliche of the black cape top-headed land developer tying the hapless, helpless farmer's daughter to the railroad tracks was reliving itself in different forms all around me. And while I supported the conservative belief that money, development, industry, and greed should have dominion over contracts, natural resources, and common human decency, I felt that my humanity was being compromised. I remember working for a big commercial printing house in Lynchburg, Virginia, back in the early 1980s. I was a fresh-faced kid working on my theological education, continuing to construct my conservative points of view. And one of the biggest clients we serviced in our shop was Jerry Falwell's Moral Majority, headquartered right there in Lynchburg, Virginia. And this was, for me, a Reagan conservative, like living in heaven's backyard. Now, one morning I was picking up some paperwork at the offices of the Moral Majority, and I had to make a quick stop in the men's room. While I was conducting my brief business, doing what guys do, a member of the Moral Majority's senior staff entered the lavatory. I recognized him, and he'd seen me around as well. We did the polite chit-chat that takes place between guys standing in public urinals, when he simply blurted out how much, out of the blue, he hated homosexuals. Homosexuals! He even paraphrased the words of Indian-hating General Sheridan by shouting out, "The only good faggot is a dead faggot." Now, that left me standing there in stunned silence, mortified that a senior member of the Moral Majority's staff was decrying gays while we both stood holding our respective penises in our respective hands in front of our respective urinals. And all I could mumble out was, I kind of see the love of Jesus as inconsistent with lynching homosexuals. Now, he spent the next several minutes berating my words, telling me what a true conservative ought to believe on the matter, And that incident was one of the earliest remembrances for me, of a conservative or conservatism that aligned itself with God and the Bible, yet so contradicted the love of the God of the Bible. So this began my trek down the path of confusion. If conservatism was good, how could it hold to ideals that seemingly contradicted goodness? And this defined the internal struggle that I was engaged in for many years. Now, perhaps I'm being a little harsh with my conservative brothers and sisters. I'm a conservative. I still hold to many certain conservative ideals, but I've begun to temper those ideals with more heart and humanity. At least that's what I call it. At least to a greater extent than I did before I started understanding how much more important those things were. And this has led me to an innate confusion, the colliding of two internal trains heading toward each other on the same set of tracks. I understand and adhere to the conservative ideals of personal responsibility and learning how to fish rather than being handed a free fish. I believe that all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which are the three things that break down the religious spiritual needs of humanity: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Not the guarantee of fairness, the guarantee that we have the right to these things and the right to pursue them. Now, I know in my heart of hearts that the government that rules least is the government that rules best. And that smaller government, non-invasive taxation, the right to bear arms, and being a nation of law is essential to continued life of the United States of America. But where I start to drift from the mainline conservative agenda is when I see human beings falling through the cracks of the decking of American conservatism. You can't eat idealism. Smaller government never prevented a needy family's electricity from being shut off for inability to pay. Sure, maybe in the long run, our system of free enterprise can establish a better future for everyone. But what do people do while conservatives are attempting to build their own versions of utopia? What do they do when Democrats or liberals are attempting to build their versions of utopia? Somewhere in the mix, we as conservatives have lost touch with our humanity. We promulgate great things that can happen down the road, but we have no fail-safes for the people caught in the mix of the political rivalry. I've always believed that congressional gridlock is a damned good thing. The slower government moves, the better for anyone with a purse or a wallet. But in the midst of all the fighting and the political maneuvering, the people can lose. I'm not talking about religion or moral majorities, but rather about placing humanity above politics. We're to be good stewards of our planet and its inhabitants. We need to downsize government while at the same time finding ways to not let people fall through the cracks. We have to strive at all times to uphold and defend the Constitution in its original intent and in living recognition of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Not leave people behind, but help create opportunity, and in the meantime, help those who cannot help themselves. So I find myself from time to time wondering how Ronald Reagan would handle the current situation in our country, current foreign or domestic governmental crises. WWRD, what would Reagan do? But as I grow older, I find myself internalizing things and letting them affect me on a much more personal level. So the real question I need to ask is not how my party or its representatives should handle things, but in my place, representing me, but how I, as a citizen of this great country and a free-thinking individual possessing personal freedom and God-given liberty, live and act like a human being. Conservatives and liberals can be damned. Republicans and Democrats can be damned. Leftists and rightists can all go to hell in the same handbasket. What I think we need, and I'll tell you this, I voted for Donald Trump for a reason. So I believe in what he's doing, even though I don't always believe in him, the man. We may or may not get along, he and I, if we knew each other. Love to have a couple of pints with him, though, he'd have to drink soda pop. He doesn't drink alcohol. Love to pick his brain sometime. So that is where I am on issues as a human being. Now, you can't always operate off of that emotive. You need to operate out of logic as well. So I see and understand the things that we need to do. I said this morning, I couldn't vote for Biden. Why? Because I don't trust him. And I don't mean I find him to be slimy and untrustworthy. That's not how I'm saying that. What I mean by that is I have no trust in his ability to do what I think this country needs to have done. There's a lot of rhetoric in there. Trump, on the other hand, doesn't speak the way I speak. I don't necessarily like the way he acts all the time. But you know what? I like what he's doing. And so I would support him. Now, I don't blindly support either. I have people right now that accuse me over on my Facebook page, my social media, of blindly supporting. Oh, you're just a Trumpette. And so you're going to go ahead and support your guy. Well, you know what? All you can shut the fuck up. Because that's not true about who I am. And if you knew me, you wouldn't spew words like that out of your pie hole. That's not who I am. And I don't think that's what any of us should be. I support who I support out of conscience. Because I believe that there are things that we need to do and need to get done. Now, how does that look when it comes to this current problem with this election? The problem being, maybe not the election itself. Well, maybe it is the election. Maybe it is the things that are happening. That list, that bullet-pointed list I gave you, that might not be sourced in the news, but sure raises an awful lot of red flag. Those bullet points are the result of the red flags being raised, not the other way around. And so, what if those things are taking place? Do you see the left? Do you see, any politician? Do you look at what's going on in the elections right now? Who's running for on the left? Do you see those people as the people that you would entrust your life with? See, I believe that about Trump. My personal stance, I would trust my life and my family's life with him. Because I don't believe he's going to do anything that will intentionally harm us. I see the left in a different light. Now, there's a lot to discuss, there's a lot to debate and all of that. And I'm going to leave you a bit hanging on that point, but I think you know where I stand and where I'm coming from. So, Siani, you got to go. I just happened to see that. It's your kid's bedtime. Good night, all. I hope tomorrow's brighter. Thank you. Me too. Hope your day is brighter tomorrow as well. By the way, I have to say, when I mentioned that I come from a family that is dyed-in-the-wool, liberal, DFL, Democrat, farm labor, all of that stuff. My mom, several years ago, flipped over to conservative. My mom's a huge Trump supporter. So, my 78-year-old mom. So, I'm seeing a lot of comments here. Technically, right now, this minute, we're done. We're out of time. If you'd like, we can talk a little bit more. I'll lighten up. I hope that this program tonight said something to you, makes you think beyond the boundaries a bit. It's always good to think. It's good to think outside the box you might be in. That's what I like to do. So I appreciate your being here. We can talk for a little bit. If you want to go over to Jimmy Johnson's show over at Beyond Reality, his show starts up at 10. If you want to stick around here, we can talk for a few more minutes. And maybe I can go through some of your comments. Because as I was talking, I don't always look over there and see a lot of them. So Morgan Snow says, I'm tired of people telling me how I'm supposed to think. I did not come to the USA for just that, the opposite. Exactly. And I got to tell you, the left will tell you what to think more than the right. Now, somebody on the left who's a leftist will go, no, we don't, Scotty, come on. And I'll say, yeah, you do. You want to tell people how to think, what to believe. You want to change what we think. Now, I suppose everybody wants to do that to a certain extent. We want to change. If you know somebody that's thinking you believe the wrong way, you want to help them change. That's what we do. But I think we run into that a lot with, I run into a lot with the left. And I'm really overtired of the criticisms. I try to not go out there and overly criticize anybody for any reason. Man, I sure put up with it from a lot of people. So, and by the way, let me just, we'll call it for tonight. Folks, thanks for being here. If you want to stick around, we'll keep going. But those of you who have to go, thanks for being here for the Intrepid radio program. Tomorrow night will probably not be live, probably be pre-recorded tomorrow night. I always pre-record sometime in the day, so it's same day stuff. But we may come live again tomorrow night. We'll just see what happens. So I want to thank you for being here again, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time tomorrow night, 23 hours from now. We'll be right back. So thanks for being here. Now, those of you still sitting here, let's hang out for a second. All right, guys. Let's just move into a little extra. Now, this is something we're going to do more of when I get the memberships going. We'll do some extra stuff tonight, just for a few minutes. I don't want to go too late. It's been a long day. And hey, Michelle, Canham Free, good to see you. And you're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, only a true Intrepid stays, says Matt Finn. Janice, hey, good Janice, good to see you. Thank you. I appreciate your being here. Michelle says, is it confirmation bias or unchecked narcissism? I don't know exactly what you were referencing there, so I can't even comment on exactly what that is. So if you're still here and you want to give me a little more on that, you might have been responding to something I was actually saying. I don't know where you said that exactly. Sometime in the last few minutes. Always good to see you too, Michelle. And let's see, Doug, good to see you. Hola. Little late, Doug. We're just ending. But we'll be here for a few minutes. And Doug, just giving you crap. So I want to thank everybody who was here and has to go for being here for the last hour. It was fantastic. Let's see. Matt says, my grandpa was a part of the Frozen Chosen in Korea. In the Marines, but we didn't have a great relationship on my dad's side. So didn't hear his stories as an adult. Yeah, that's too bad, Matt. I understand that. My dad was in the Marines too. It would have been in the late 50s. So, My grandfather was in Patton's Third Army during the war. I got some of his stories on tape somewhere. I hope they're just not gone forever. I have to convert them from old VHS. So I recorded him back in 92 to 93, somewhere in there on VHS. So hope I can find those. I'm sure they're in a box somewhere. So Steve had an uncle who fought in the Battle of Bastion. Bastion or Bastion. Let's see. Let's see what else was going on here. Back through the show. Morgan said, I hear from my family and they're not happy. A lot of changes and towards communism. Morgan, I didn't see where you were from originally. You may have said it before, but so they're still there. Phone's starting to go off. The messages just beeping in, beeping in, beeping in. Man, I don't know what's coming in on my phone. So, hey, Geolotica, good to see you. You're here. You just didn't say hi. Nice to see you. Hi. So good to have you here. And Germany. Okay. Thanks, Steve. Morgan says my grandfather was close to Himmler. Wow. That's some history right there. All right. Well, I think I have shot my load, as they say, for the night. I don't think I can raise up the high impassioned speech I had earlier because we kind of started calming down. So we'll just chat a little bit. If anybody's got anything to say, let me know. Let's see. Just looking through. I'm scrolling through. Oh, excuse me. That's a big bad thing to do during the show. Good thing we're in the after show. Zuckerberg and Dorsey were just called to testify to Congress about this. They were asked this, and they lied their asses off. I'm sure they did. So, yeah, I didn't vote for any Democrats this time at all, either, Matt. I consider myself an independent. Niall said my stream is breaking down. I hope nobody experienced that too much in here. Was that for everybody? Did the stream carry pretty well tonight? Or was that only over in Ireland? Yeah, Matt, it's mathematically possible that Trump still wins. It's also very possible that some of the states called for Biden are actually Trump states, and that might be found out as well. So, times that get blurry. I've seen that watching back some of the old episodes. When I'm looking back to look up something in the chat room, and I look and sometimes I see some blur. That's distressing. Gotta have a little better hookup than just going through YouTube. So, anyway, I lost only once, says Barbara. Keep the faith, guys. We'll live. It sucks, but we've got it. So I like what Rush Limbaugh today. I heard him today, and we were driving, and I don't get much chance to really listen to him. But he started off his show by saying, Come on, folks. You got to keep the faith, he said. Stick with me here. Stick with me. Greetings. Great to have you. Great to be with you. And he's talking about introductions and so on. And he said, He said, been looking forward to this ever since I went to bed last night at about 11 o'clock. When I figured the rig was in, I said, this is not going to change, and it still hasn't changed. It's still too early to call a bunch of states, and that was this morning around 11 o'clock, 12 noon out east. He says, I consider it a blessing to have an opportunity to be with you all today. He gives out his phone number. He says, look, I know that many of you were up all night, and you're still anxious. You're walking on the ledge. You're frustrated. You're ticked off, and legitimately so. You're angry. You play by the rules. You do it up and you do it up. You want a legitimate win. You play by the rules and you get up and you realize every day the other side isn't playing by the rules. One thing I said yesterday, I'm going to keep saying it today. Keep the faith, folks. Just keep the faith that the America we know and the America we love is preserved, and it'll continue to be preserved. The American way of life is going to be preserved. Keep the faith. The best days of our country are still ahead. It was a devastating night last night for the Democrats based on all their expectations. They once again believed their polling units. It's uncanny. Folks, I can't tell you how down in the dumps, devastated and blown to smithereens the Democrats really are today. And you can read about it if you know where to go look. We are going to reelect. We have. We've reelected Donald Trump, a man who loves our country, a man who unabashedly loves our flag, loves our traditions, our founding. He worked tirelessly to win every single vote, not ballot. He won votes. Now, this is another thing Kamala Harris is out there saying. We're not going to stop till every ballot's counted. We're going to count every legitimate vote. It sounds like semantics, but it's really not. We're not going to count every ballot. We're going to count the votes. It's a big difference. And this is where Kamala Harris is wrong. It's rather clever. He goes into something else here. Rush does, but he says, she's out there. We're going to count. No, we're not. If we have to go all the way to the Amy Coney Barrett Supreme Court, you're not going to count every ballot. We're going to count every legitimate vote. We're going to play by the rules. We're going to win playing by the rules, despite the fact the other side does not. Now, here's the big question. Just because all these ballots exist and have been discovered or whatever it is, doesn't mean they're legitimate votes. You got to ask, and here's some overt examples. How many of those people are dead? How many of those ballots were harvested and stolen? There's nobody better fighting for us and on our side than the guy who's already in the White House. Donald Trump. Look at how hard he worked to win every single vote. And I still believe strongly he's going to be reelected. He's earned it. His tremendous achievements, implementation of a great agenda that he promised to implement and did. There was not a gigantic blue wave as the media tried to sell us for months and months, atop of months. Their polling was so wrong. And I didn't mean to sit here and do I told you so, I told you so. It's not about me proving I was right. It's just we know certain things after we've done this long enough and been involved in it long enough, and we've seen it operate long enough. We know there wasn't going to be a blue wave. We knew there wasn't any kind of enthusiasm behind Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And there still isn't. He's a generic guy that's getting older looking by the day, that has a D next to his name, Democrat. The polls, as expected, could not have been more wrong. There was a gigantic turnout. The Democrats, I can't tell you how depressed they are today that Trump was not repudiated. And I brought this up earlier. They thought 2016 was a fluke with Donald Trump. Whatever lies they told themselves, whatever they lied to themselves every day for 4 years, with the lie compounding in intensity to the point that they literally believed the people of this country hated Donald Trump as much as they did. Donald Trump wasn't repudiated last night. Donald Trump was reelected last night. Time will show us this. You know this. When they stopped counting, it means they're looking for Democrat votes. It means they don't have Democrat votes. It means they gotta go find them. Now, is there a news source for that point? No. This is knowing how things work. We're wise to their ways. The Al Franken technique of finding out, why, looky here, a trunk of a car here at Joe Biden rally. Why, we got 500 ballots here in the trunk of a car at the Biden rally, and look, they're all for Al Franken. Remember how that happened? That's what they're trying to pull off in all the states. Arizona last night, can I tell you what that's about? Fox News calling Arizona. What do you think that was about? I see you all talking amongst yourselves. Are you disagreeing with the points? Is that what you're doing as you talk to yourselves in there? It goes on and on and on. Fox News, believe it or not, has big problems with Trump. I mean, there's Trump yesterday on Fox and Friends. What's he doing? He's ripping Fox News. The Murdochs, I'm pretty sure, didn't like him for the things he said. You tell Trump if he keeps this up, then we're not going to give him any more time on as a guest. We're not going to put up with this. You know that's what's going on. Okay. And it goes into Arizona and the Hill and Florida and Democrats never saw it coming last night. But I'm telling you, they were hoping. These people are vindictive. People on the left. They're single-mindedly hateful. They, since Inauguration Day of 2017, they've been waiting, and they've been dreaming, they've been hoping, they've been planning on, they've been counting on you and every other American telling Donald Trump to go to hell yesterday. And that didn't happen. There was a massive Republican turnout for Donald Trump. They can't even believe it. They literally thought Trump was going to be sent packing last night. They were hoping, but it didn't happen. Trump supporters turned up in a massive number, landslide type numbers. And this still isn't done, folks. This election is not over. So boom, 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 boomity boom, and all of that. You might agree with some of that. You might disagree with some of that. Yeah, you're right, Joel Attica. It's obvious that Fox has flipped a bit. Trump's a fighter. Yep, Matt. He can fight the corruption. Morgan, you said your dad grew up in Berlin. He had some war stories to tell, especially when the Allies bombed the city. I'll bet. And, yeah, Biden sounds even older by the day. You're right, Michelle. And, Morgan, my grandfather had some good stories too. My grandfather, an American-born Hungarian Jew. His grandparents came over here from Hungary, or his parents did. And my grandfather married my mom's mother after the war. And my mom was only 4 or 5 years old, and so he's her stepfather. But he was my grandfather my whole life, into my 30s when he died. But he told stories of being in Patton's Third Army. He was at the crossing of the bloody Danube, as he called it. And he went AWOL to look for his relatives in Hungary, his Jewish relatives, and couldn't find them. They'd all been deported to the death camps. And so he never did find any of them. And he told that story to me. I have it on film somewhere. That's the tactic, says Matt. Infuriate and take it down from the inside. Same goes for the American politics. I couldn't tell you what exactly is going to happen with this election. I can't predict it. I get a feeling it's not over by a long shot. I get a gut feeling that Trump is still going to win, be declared the winner. Might take a little time, but it's going to happen. And if it doesn't, it's going to uncover a lot. So, yeah, we better find out by January 20th or Pelosi will serve. Yeah, I don't think that'll happen, to tell you the truth. Marie Keithley, nice to see you. Your grandpa was Tank Battalion, almost accidentally blew up MacArthur. Oops. Oops. Cool story, though. All right, folks. I got 10:22 here. That's 11:22 out east. I think I'm going to call it tonight. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to this show. Thanks for being part of it. Keep your chin up. Now, if you're a Biden supporter, keep your chin up too. You may have some hard days ahead too. I don't think he's the best thing for this country. I was listening to him on the radio today, on the news. I heard a clip where he was talking about, I'm not going to claim any kind of, that's the way he talked. I'm not going to claim that I won. And he sounded like he was, and I don't mean this to be mean-spirited. His speech patterns start to sound like somebody who's been drinking. He's got that thing going on. Come on, man. And I think he says that when he catches himself. But he was saying that everything that came out of his mouth was verbatim some of the speeches I heard him give over the last month. I'm not going to be the Democrats' president. I'm going to be the American president, he said. And I've heard him say that before many times. It seemed to me that these are stirring words. It's nice to hear. It empowers your base, but it's not telling me anything different. My wife said to me today something that I hadn't even thought about. It's so obvious. Biden has this great plan to save us all from COVID. My wife said today, she said, if he's got this great plan, why didn't he tell President Trump about it? Why didn't he tell the White House? Why didn't he tell senators? Why didn't he share that information? If he knows how to stop this thing in its tracks, why hasn't he done that? Why hasn't he stepped forward to help? That could have made him the candidate of the year. But he didn't do that. Good night, Morgan. Have a good night. We're done. You're not going to miss much. Falling action now. So maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow. So there you go, guys. I'm tired. I'm done. I started doing this broadcasting early this morning. So, and it's been a long day. I've been running all day today, barely in this office today. And so I want to thank you for taking your time to be here. I will share something with you. I'm not super pent up about this election. Maybe a little bit more than I like to admit. It bothers me a bit. that this is going on. And I'll confide in you. I haven't had a cigarette in 7.5 weeks until earlier this evening. So I'm going to have a cigarette. I got to have a post-election cigarette. And, but you know what? I didn't smoke the whole thing. Just didn't taste good anymore. So that's the only cigarette I've had since, other than a puff off of the neighbors the other night, Halloween night. So, the only fear I have about smoking again is wanting to have another one. That's why I don't do it. So I said, I'm not going to do it. Now, tonight I had one. I didn't feel like having another one. So there you go. Oh, don't worry about it, Morgan. I'm fine. I know what to do. That one cigarette isn't going to do it to me. I'm a little stronger than that. Trust me on that. So don't worry about it. I smoke 3 per day. Stress reliever, says Michelle. Yeah, I don't even do that. I haven't had, and you know what? I don't miss it. The only times I miss smoking is when I see other people smoking. I go, wow, love to pull one out and light one up. But I don't have a craving. I'm not like, oh my God, go get me a cigarette. I still have the pack I opened today was the pack I bought 2 days before I stopped 7.5 weeks ago. So it's been sitting here the whole time. Right over here. The pull and the power of suggestion. All I have to do is watch an episode of Mad Men and I want to light up. So, so don't worry about me, Morgan. I got this. Yeah, there you go. There you go, Michelle. Thank you. Yeah, most of mine did too, Steve. I smoked, but I would let an awful lot of cigarettes burn off too. So, all right. I'm belaboring the goodbyes and the good nights. I think I was going to try to make it to 10:30. It's 10:28 and a half. So, you guys all take it easy tonight. I will see you tomorrow. And that's all I got. Have a good day. Keep your chins up. Be happy. Be cheerful. Don't let anybody get under your skin. And as my aunt the witch used to say, joke them if they can't take a fuck. So hopefully that won't get me banned from YouTube. Or maybe my political philosophy will get me banned from YouTube. So thank you, Steve. All right, you guys. You have a good night. Oh, Morgan, my willpower. I'm not patting myself on the back, but I've always said, it's like somebody offered me a patch. Do you take the patch? Maybe you should take it. I've got some. I'm like, no, I don't need the patch. Are you going to make it? Do you need to be, maybe we shouldn't smoke around you. I'm like, no, you ain't smoke around me. My neighbors would come over on the patio and they'd smoke in front of me and I wouldn't smoke. And it's not like I was going, oh my God, they're smoking. I just decided I'm not going to do it. And if I have one, it's because I'm going to decide to have one. But I'm not going to pick up smoking. Again, don't want to. So that's me, though. That's just me. It's my personality. I don't have an addictive personality. I'm a foodie more than I'm anything. I like to eat. I like food. That's a bane to my existence. I like to sit on my butt. Oh, yeah. You just stop Marie and you don't look back. So I get that. Field cusses all the time. Yeah, he's a bad influence on all of us. Is he still here? So you heard that? Love all you crazies. Thanks, Doug. Good to have you here, brother. And a super taster. Yeah. All right. There it is. Now I'm done. Because I'm dragging it out. I'm a little tired. Just being mellow. We're calling it down mellow. So you guys have a good night. I'm going to go now. I'm going to end this stream. I want to thank you for being here, for giving me your time, your friendship. Maybe in the future, we're going to have to do something about getting us all together. Maybe in the spring. I like that idea. When it's nice again. It's nice right now. It was almost 80 degrees here today. It's gorgeous. That's all I got. Anybody got a good car for sale, by the way? I need a car for my family. An affordable one. Preferably SUV, suburban type of thing. Something that's big that's going to carry kids. If anybody out there, any of my Intrepid friends, if you got something, let me know. Maybe that's a good way to meet up. I need a good car that's going to last, car that's going to cost me not very much money. So there you go. All right. Amen to that, Matt Finn. 70? You're not 70, Michelle. You must have been talking about something else. So, all right, guys. Have a good night. See you later. I'm ending it now, so don't keep going. Boom. Have a good night. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. The chat room, I think, will go on forever. So we'll see you guys later. Have a good night. Bye.